The air at my wedding tasted like frosting and nerves when my mother glided toward me, smile sharp enough to cut glass. Cameras flashed, guests laughed, and while I held my bouquet, still dizzy from the ceremony, she leaned in and whispered the sentence that hollowed out the day. "We've decided the car Evan's parents gave you should go to your sister, Bella." She said it like she was rearranging chairs. Bella, shimmering in silver sequins beside her, giggled. "Relax, Harper. It's just a car." But it wasn't just a car. It was the first gift anyone had ever given me without expecting repayment. A symbol of independence, a gesture of respect. And they were stealing it in front of an entire wedding hall. My new husband, Evan, went still beside me. His eyes didn't flash with anger. They darkened with understanding. He'd heard my stories about how things worked in my family, how Bella's whims were law, how my mother dressed manipulation as tradition, how my father disappeared behind silence. But hearing them wasn't the same as witnessing them. Guests kept dancing, oblivious. The band swayed through a slow romantic song, and in the middle of it, my mother looked at me the way she had my whole life, as if generosity flowed through me and belonged to everyone but me. "You and Evan only need one car," she added, tilting her head. "Bella's been struggling. Be a good sister." I didn't answer. Not yet, but something in me shifted. A quiet hinge finally unlatched. Across the room, fairy lights flickered over Evan's steady face. He touched my back gently. "You okay?" he whispered. For the first time in years, I knew the exact truth. No. But I was finally done pretending. The thing about my sister Bella is this: she didn't become the golden child overnight. She was raised into it, polished, protected, praised for breathing while I learned to survive in the shadows. Growing up, the Lane household revolved around her. If Bella was sad, the whole house quieted. If Bella wanted something, it appeared. If Bella failed, the world, not Bella, was blamed. Meanwhile, if I wanted anything, I was told to be grateful. If I achieved something, it was expected. If I struggled, it meant I wasn't trying hard enough. It didn't matter that I worked part-time jobs in high school while Bella focused on her passion projects. It didn't matter that I paid for my own first car while Bella totaled hers twice and walked away with fresh keys and no consequences. It didn't matter that I spent my 20s building an interior design career from scratch while Bella hopped between hobbies, each one cushioned by my parents' money and excuses. Mom always called Bella delicate, the kind of word that's really a permission slip. Dad called her our little star, even when she didn't do anything to shine. And me? I was the hinge that let the door swing open for her. The peacekeeper. The responsible one. The daughter who didn't have needs, only solutions. By the time we were adults, the pattern wasn't just familiar. It was expected. Bella took. I adjusted. So when Mom announced at my wedding that the car Evan's parents gifted me would go to Bella, it wasn't a new betrayal. It was a greatest hits album. A childhood of reruns playing out in a single statement. I could practically hear Mom's old lines echoing in her voice. "Bella needs it more, Harper. Don't be dramatic. You're the strong one. Help her. Sharing is love in our family." Love meant sacrificing my joy so Bella could coast. Respect meant keeping quiet while she took center stage. Family meant forfeiting anything they decided she should have. Standing there in my wedding dress, surrounded by flowers and fairy lights, I realized something chilling. My wedding day wasn't the exception. It was the blueprint, and my mother fully expected me to follow it for the rest of my life. Evan's hand rested on my arm, steady, grounding, while across the room, Bella basked in attention she hadn't earned for 29 years. The script had been the same, but this time, the ending would be different. If there was one thing Ava learned early, it was that independence wasn't a choice, it was a necessity. Being the responsible daughter in a family built on imbalance meant she had two options: drown in the expectations her parents placed on her, or swim far enough away that the tide couldn't pull her back. She chose to swim. By her mid-20s, Ava had carved out a life with edges sharp enough to protect her and soft enough to breathe in. She worked her way through design school, taking night shifts at a cafe and weekend jobs staging apartments for real estate agents. She learned to stretch every dollar, to say yes to opportunities that terrified her, and to build skills from the ground up, while Bella drifted from hobby to hobby: photography one week, acting classes the next, a skincare brand she abandoned after 2 posts. Ava built a career brick by brick. Her apartment was small, but it was hers. Her car was used, but she paid every cent of it herself. Her reputation in the design world grew, not because she was gifted things, but because she earned them, and that independence? It wasn't just financial. It became the foundation of who she was. Ava learned to draw boundaries, not loud, dramatic ones, but quiet, steady ones. She stopped answering calls that only came with requests hidden beneath sweetheart and just this. Once, she stopped rearranging her life for emergencies that were always the result of Bella's carelessness or her parents' permissiveness. She stopped apologizing for prioritizing herself, but the more Ava strengthened her own life, the more her family seemed to tighten their grip. Her mother insisted on approving every major decision, as if Ava were a branch that still belonged to the tree. Her father dismissed her success with lines like, "You've always been the practical one," turning her accomplishments into obligations. And Bella floated through life believing there was always a net beneath her. Ava kept building. She found an apartment with sunlight that warmed her mornings. She filled her shelves with design books, fabrics, sketches of spaces she dreamed of bringing to life. She took on bigger clients, landed her first commercial project, and stood in the middle of the finished space with tears in her eyes, not because of exhaustion, but because she had finally created something no one could take from her. Then came Evan. He didn't fall in love with the version of Ava who quietly held everything together. He fell in love with the woman who had fought for her life, who carried herself with careful strength, who knew how to build a home from broken pieces. And for the first time, Ava felt what partnership was supposed to look like: shared responsibility, mutual respect, love without extraction, their life together, the house, the wedding. The car symbolized something she'd never been given growing up, a future that belonged to her. But her family? They didn't see Ava's independence as growth. They saw it as their loss of control. And that loss is exactly what pushed her mother to make her move on the wedding day, because in their eyes, Ava wasn't supposed to build a life of her own. She was supposed to build one they could use. For Ava, the car Evan's parents gifted her wasn't about leather seats, horsepower, or convenience. It was the first gift in her entire life that didn't come with strings attached. Growing up, every gift from her parents had been a disguised transaction. New shoes? Be grateful or Bella will feel left out. A birthday check? Don't forget your sister needs help paying for her summer program. Even the smallest kindness came preloaded with obligation, a debt she never asked for, but was expected to repay tenfold. So when Evan's parents handed her that small silver key during the rehearsal dinner, she felt something foreign blooming in her chest. Respect. Real, uncomplicated respect. They didn't ask if Bella needed a car more. They didn't question whether Ava deserved it. They didn't imply she was lucky they thought of her. They simply said, "You built this life with our son. We want to support your future together." For Ava, that gesture meant more than any wedding gift placed on the registry table inside the reception hall. It wasn't luxury, it was acknowledgement, a symbol that someone finally viewed her not as a resource, not as a fallback plan, not as a sister whose role was to give until she broke, but as a woman worthy of being cared for. The car represented stability, independence, the kind of partnership she'd spent her whole life believing she wasn't allowed to have. Evan understood what it meant to her even before she explained it. He had watched her grow, heal, and build piece by piece. He knew she'd held her family on her back for years and that this small, modest vehicle was freedom wrapped in metal and paint. But her mother saw something entirely different. Grace saw a shift in power. A daughter no longer dependent on parental approval. A daughter supported by another family, one that valued her. To Grace, the car wasn't a gift. It was a threat, because if Ava accepted something of value from someone outside the Harper household, it meant she was forming bonds that her mother couldn't manipulate or control, and nothing threatened Grace more than losing access to what she believed she owned. Ava's obedience. So while Evan's parents saw the car as an expression of love, and Ava saw it as a symbol of respect, Grace saw it as something else entirely, a possession she needed to reassign to restore the family hierarchy. That was why she waited until the wedding day, in front of witnesses, with cameras flashing, with Danielle glowing beside her like the chosen heir. That was the moment Grace decided she would pass the car to Bella, not as a favor, not out of kindness, but as a final, public reminder: what belongs to Ava belongs to the family, and the family decides where it goes. Except this time, Ava wasn't the same girl they raised. This time, she had come prepared. The moment Grace announced, "We're passing the car his parents gave you over to your sister." The ballroom didn't go silent, it sharpened. A few guests paused mid-bite. Someone lowered a champagne flute. The band's soft melody suddenly felt like background noise to a brewing storm. Danielle stepped closer, her sequin dress catching the fairy lights like a spotlight meant for her alone. She tilted her head with that familiar sugar-coated smirk. "Relax, Ava. It's just a car." But it wasn't just a car. And Danielle knew it. Grace placed a gentle, possessive hand on her younger daughter's shoulder, guiding her forward as if presenting royalty. "Your sister needs something reliable. You and Evan can share one." It makes more sense. The entitlement was so casual, so practiced. It almost sounded reasonable until you remembered every year of history behind it. Evan's parents, standing near the dessert table, exchanged a subtle, confused glance. They'd meant the gift to symbolize trust and respect. They hadn't expected it to become a spectacle. But Grace wasn't done. She raised her voice just enough for the surrounding tables to hear. "It's only fair," she added sweetly. "Danielle has been through so much lately. This will help her get back on her feet." There it was, the family's favorite narrative. Anything could be justified as long as Danielle was framed as delicate, deserving, and tragic in just the right measure. Grace stepped back, waiting for applause, affirmation, obedience. Instead, she got murmurs. A cousin whispered, "Did she really just take her wedding gift?" An aunt frowned. Even the photographer hesitated, unsure whether to keep capturing the moment or pretend not to witness a theft. Danielle pulled out her phone with a flourish. "Let me go grab a picture with the car before we leave tonight." She giggled, as if she were already the legal owner. Then the moment that made Ava's blood run cold, Grace snapped her fingers at one of the groomsmen. "Yes, could you bring the car keys from the bridal suite? They should be in Ava's clutch." She was giving commands on Ava's wedding day, to Ava's wedding party, about Ava's property. But when the groomsmen hesitated, looking uncertain, Danielle jumped in. "Seriously, just get them. She won't mind. It's family, family." A word they wielded like a crowbar. All around them, eyes widened, phones subtly lifted. Guests exchanged looks. It was unfolding publicly now. A humiliation staged in real time. Grace leaned in close to her daughter, her smile perfectly camera-ready. "Sweetheart, don't make a scene," she murmured. "Be gracious. Let Danielle have this. She needs it more." Ava's hands trembled, not with fear, but with the weight of every stolen moment before this one. And then, the final blow. Danielle raised her phone and snapped a selfie. Beaming. "Can't wait to drive home tonight," she announced loudly. "Thanks, sis." The ballroom gasped. Grace nodded proudly, believing she had secured her victory. A public redistribution of Ava's property, disguised as maternal generosity. But Ava had one thing her family didn't know: a notarized declaration, signed 2 weeks earlier. Legal protection against exactly this kind of theft. And with the entire room watching, Grace Harper had just walked straight into a trap, while her mother staged the scene and Danielle posed like she was already the owner. Ava stood perfectly still, not frozen but calculating. Because unlike the girl they used to control, Ava wasn't walking into this wedding unprotected. She had planned for this. 2 weeks before the ceremony, during a late-night design meeting, her co-worker Mariah, a paralegal by day, had looked up from a contract Ava was reviewing and said, "Your mom sounds predictable. You should protect yourself." Ava laughed it off at first, but Mariah pressed. "Real boundaries require real paperwork, especially with people who pretend every gift you receive belongs to the whole family." Those words lingered long after the meeting ended. So the next morning, Ava and Evan met with a notary. They signed a legally binding declaration stating that all gifts given to Ava in celebration of the marriage were her sole property. No one could transfer, sell, or reassign them without her explicit written consent. Any attempt to do so would trigger a legal review and potential forfeiture of inheritance. From Evan's family, it wasn't paranoia. It was preparation. And now, standing in the golden glow of the ballroom, watching her mother try to publicly reassign the car, Ava felt a strange sort of calm, because for the first time in her life, she wasn't scrambling to defend herself. She was watching them walk directly into a boundary they could not manipulate, twist, or charm their way out of. Evan stepped closer, placing a steady hand on her lower back. "You ready?" he murmured. She nodded. Grace was still smiling, oblivious, waiting for the keys to be fetched. Like this was any other family redistribution of Ava's life. Danielle refreshed her phone, already composing a caption for a car she didn't own. The guests were murmuring louder now, unsure whether they were witnessing entitlement, tradition, or theft. Ava slowly reached into her clutch and pulled out a thick cream-colored envelope. The notarized document inside, embossed and undeniable. Evan's parents saw it and straightened. They knew what it meant. Ava didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She simply stepped forward, poised and precise, and handed the envelope to her mother. "Before you go any further," Ava said, her tone calm but cutting, "you should read this." Grace blinked, confused. She opened it. Her face shifted. Politeness, confusion, recognition, horror. Danielle leaned in, reading over her shoulder, her smile collapsing. Ava folded her hands gently. "I didn't come unprepared," she said softly. "Not this time." And the room held its breath, because the daughter who had spent 29 years being predictable had finally become someone impossible to control. Grace's eyes scanned the notarized document, but her practiced smile didn't break, not at first. Years of social choreography kept her face perfectly arranged, even as the meaning hit her. Danielle, reading along, wasn't as composed. Her mouth fell open in a silent, stunned what? The guests closest to them could feel the shift. Conversation tapered off. The band faltered, the singer's microphone catching a quiet feedback wail before the music dulled to a background hum. Grace finally inhaled sharply. What is this?" she asked, voice light, public ready, but trembling at the edges. Ava didn't flinch. "It's a notarized declaration," she said evenly, "signed by me and Evan before the wedding. It protects all gifts given to us or to me specifically from being transferred without my written consent." A ripple swept through the crowd. Evan stepped closer, his presence steady and deliberate. "We both signed it. My parents too," he added calmly. "It's binding." Danielle let out a thin laugh, too bright to brittle. "You're kidding, right? This is dramatic, even for you." Ava tilted her head slightly. "You walked into our garage last night and took photos with the car." The whisper spread like electricity. She already took pictures with it. Was she planning to post it? Phones rose discreetly as guests began filming, sensing a moment no one would fully believe without proof. Danielle's expression twisted. "It was just for fun. A joke for my followers." Ava didn't raise her voice. She simply replied, "Jokes don't require breaking into places that don't belong to you." Grace stepped forward, lowering her voice in a tone meant to regain control. "Ava, sweetheart, you're embarrassing yourself. This isn't necessary." It was a misunderstanding. Ava's eyes didn't waver. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a decision, publicly executed. For the first time all night, Grace's mask cracked. A flicker of panic crossed her face before she smoothed it away. Richard approached, trying, as always, to be the peacekeeper. "Ava, let's not do this here," he murmured. "It's your wedding, that's why," Ava answered. "Because you made it public first." Around them, guests held their breath. The air felt taut, like a held note waiting to shatter. Danielle pointed a shaking finger. "You're blowing this out of proportion. It's just a stupid car." Ava turned to her, fully, calm as glass. "It was never about the car. It was about access. About assuming my life is yours to rearrange." She paused long enough for the weight of her words to settle. "Today, that ends." Grace's voice finally broke. "You can't treat your family like criminals." Ava stepped forward just 1 inch, enough to reclaim the space. "I'm not treating you like criminals," she said softly. "I'm treating you like people who crossed a boundary." And this time, the world saw it. Silence. Dense. Breathless. Then Evan intertwined his fingers with hers. "We're done here," he said gently, and as the music tentatively resumed, Ava walked away, leaving her mother, father, and sister frozen in the gold light of a ballroom that no longer belonged to them. The ballroom noise dimmed behind them as Evan guided Ava through the side doors and into a quieter corridor. The air felt cooler there, cleaner, like the world had finally stopped pressing its thumb into her chest. Ava inhaled shakily. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the adrenaline crash of finally standing up to people she'd been trained her whole life not to challenge. Evan noticed. He wrapped his jacket around her shoulders without a word. For the first time in hours, she felt warm. They walked a few steps before Ava leaned back against the wall, her veil brushing the cinder-painted surface. She closed her eyes. "I didn't know it would turn into that." Evan didn't laugh. He didn't dismiss it. He didn't tell her she overreacted the way her family always had. He simply stood in front of her, palms open, steady. It wasn't you who made it public, he reminded gently. They did. You just answered in the language they understand. Clarity. Ava opened her eyes. They were shining, not with tears, but with relief. You're not embarrassed? Evan stepped closer so she could see the truth in his expression. Embarrassed? His voice was low, earnest. Ava, I'm proud of you. That sentence broke something inside her, a quiet, tender fracture. Not pain. Release. He lifted her hand, thumb brushing the inside of her wrist like he had earlier on the dance floor when everything started to unravel. But this time, she wasn't shaking. You know what I saw in that ballroom? He asked. She shook her head. A woman who refused to let a lifetime of being taken advantage of continue. A woman who stood her ground with dignity. He smiled softly. And a woman I get to call my wife. Her breath caught. Evan leaned his forehead against hers. You didn't marry into my family tonight, he whispered. You married out of yours. Ava let out a quiet, startled laugh, the first real laugh since the ceremony began. It felt like a door opening inside her chest. Behind them, faint echoes of murmurs leaked from the ballroom. Someone must have told someone else. Someone must have asked for details. Gossip spread like spilled glitter. Ava stiffened. What if this becomes the story of our wedding? Evan squeezed her hand. Then let it. Because every story has a villain. And for the first time, you're not playing their part. She stared at him, the weight of years slowly sliding off her shoulders. But what about your parents? She asked. Will they think I was disrespectful? He chuckled softly. My parents watched everything. They saw exactly who you are and who they are. And they told me, before I came out here. He paused, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Stand by your wife. She's right. Ava blinked, stunned. They said that? Evan nodded. They've seen this pattern too. They've always worried it would bleed into our marriage. Tears finally spilled, not from hurt, but from validation she didn't know she could feel. Evan caught her face gently in both hands. Ava, listen to me. You are not dramatic. You are not selfish. You are not wrong. His voice softened. You are setting boundaries. And if anyone in that room has a problem with it, it's because they benefited from you not having any. The truth landed deep. Evan kissed her forehead. Now, let's go finish our night. Not theirs. Ava let out a slow exhale, straightened her posture, wiped the smudged mascara from beneath her eyes. Okay, she whispered. Let's go home. And with her hand in his, Ava walked back toward the ballroom, not to seek approval, not to apologize, but to reclaim the night that would mark the first day of a life she finally chose for herself. When Ava and Evan stepped back into the ballroom, it wasn't the same room they'd left. The air felt thinner, the whispers sharper, like the chandeliers themselves were listening. Her mother's smile had cracked into something tense and brittle. Danielle hovered near the cake table, phone clutched in her hand, as if waiting for someone to tell her the narrative she should post next. Her father stood stiff beside them, hands in his pockets, avoiding eye contact. For the first time in her life, Ava didn't shrink under their gaze. She didn't brace for impact. She didn't apologize preemptively. She didn't contort herself into the daughter they expected. Instead, she walked across the floor with Evan's quiet strength beside her. Every step deliberate, like she was stepping out of a script she'd spent 29 years trapped inside. Her mother opened her mouth, ready to salvage the situation. Ava, sweetheart. Ava lifted a hand gently. No, we're not doing this again. The entire table stilled. Doing what? Her mother whispered, voice trembling between offense and disbelief. Pretending your decisions are mine to fix, Ava said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. It carried. Pretending I don't notice how often I'm asked to give while Danielle is taught to take. Pretending that love means surrender. Danielle scoffed softly, but it didn't have teeth. The room was not hers anymore, Ava continued, calm and steady. For years, you taught me that being a good daughter meant never saying no. That sacrifice was my role. That boundaries were selfish. She met her mother's eyes. But tonight showed me something different. I'm the only one who believed that. Her father finally spoke, hushed and sharp. Ava, this is not the time. Yes, Ava said, it is. Because you chose my wedding as the time to take something that wasn't yours. She gestured toward Danielle. And you assumed I'd just let you. Danielle's jaw tightened. You're being dramatic. It's a car. No, Ava corrected softly. It's a pattern. Silence expanded, stretching across the ballroom like a drawn curtain. Ava felt the years stack behind her, every borrowed belonging, every forced generosity. Every time she'd swallowed hurt to keep the peace, but she wasn't swallowing anything now. This stops here, she said. Tonight, I'm not your resource. I'm not your fixer. I'm not the daughter who absorbs the consequences of your choices. Her mother blinked rapidly, stunned by the calm rebellion she'd never anticipated. Evan stepped closer, not to speak for Ava, but to stand witness. Ava's spine straightened, her breath steadied. I love this family, she said, but I will no longer break myself to fit into the space you leave for me. There was no shouting, no chaos, just truth finally spoken aloud after decades of silence. A new stillness settled over her, warm and solid. Ava had not raised her voice, but she had broken something much louder. The pattern. She reached for Evan's hand and turned away first, the ultimate reversal of a lifetime spent waiting for permission to walk. When Ava let go of Evan's hand and walked toward the exit doors, she felt not fear, not guilt, but space. Space she hadn't felt since childhood. Space where her breath finally belonged to her. Behind her, the ballroom stirred with fractured whispers. Her mother stood frozen, a hand pressed to her chest as if steadying a cracked foundation. Danielle wiped at her mascara, furious and shaken. Her father looked at the floor, recognizing that something irreversible had just happened, though he would never admit it aloud. But Ava didn't pause to manage their emotions. Not this time. Outside, under the glow of the venue's string lights, the cool air wrapped around her like a clean slate. Evan joined her quietly, slipping his jacket over her shoulders. You didn't just stand up to them, he said gently. You stepped out of your entire past. Ava exhaled slowly. That's what it feels like. She realized she didn't need a dramatic escape, or a triumphant speech, or applause from the guests behind her. Freedom didn't roar, it unfolded, quietly, calmly, authentically. When they reached the car, the same one her family tried to claim, Ava paused with her hand on the door handle. For the first time, she whispered, I feel like my life is mine. Evan kissed her temple. Then let's drive into it. As they pulled away from the venue, the bridal veil fluttered out the window like a white flag of surrender, but not from Ava. It was a surrender of the old story, the one she no longer owed to anyone. Final message, life lesson for the audience. Sometimes the biggest betrayal isn't what someone takes from you. It's what they convince you to give up your boundaries, your voice, your worth. And sometimes the greatest revenge isn't anger or confrontation. It's finally choosing yourself. If someone calls your boundaries disrespect, drama, or selfish, remember this: respect without reciprocity is exploitation. Love without freedom is control. And family without boundaries is just a cycle waiting to be broken. If this story touched something in you, share your own experience below. You're not alone, and you deserve a life where you get to keep what's yours.